What's up, guys?
Yeah.
You're listening to another late June edition of the SplashTag Podcast. I am here and back with my usual podcast partner in crime, Joe. How's it going, man?
Not bad, man. I'm chilling. I'm glad to be back doing this. So it's pretty hype.
Yeah, yeah. You and I, we haven't recorded an official podcast since before the playoffs started. Um, Obviously, a lot's happened since. With actual results and injuries and things that have implications on free agency and whatnot. But since it's late June, then the draft happened a couple days ago. I definitely wanted to talk to you a little bit about some kind of quick draft, quick draft reactions, how we see certain rookies doing in their situations, and then a little bit on summer league and free agency. So to just kind of start off, I don't want to harp too much on the draft, but what were just some quick takeaways you had from the draft?
Um, so I have like a couple things that like are kind of important to me. And one of those things is teams drafting for like a spot or an ideal fit as opposed to best
Best player
possible.
available?
Um, and so for me, if you're not a good team and you're at the top of the draft, you shouldn't be like, well, how does this guy fit next to this guy?
Yeah.
You should just be doing basically what the Hawks did, and they kind of got two redundant players on top of a couple of redundant guys they already have. But they were like, you know what? If we take like four shots at getting a wing player, you know what? We're going to get a wing player, right? Uh, I mean, and the converse of that is the New Orleans pick at 8. Obviously, they couldn't have messed up the Zion Williamson pick because it's Zion Williamson. But for me, taking Jackson Hayes at 8, when I think the next center wasn't till 18, I think.
Was it the Pacers guy?
Yeah, Goga.
Yeah, Gobert.
Um,
Yeah,
so when clearly, I mean, you and I both knew this was a very, very center weak draft, especially with Bol Bol. I mean, I assume we'll talk about that later, but he obviously got hurt, and then there basically was no center talent in this draft. And drafting Jackson Hayes that high when you could have gone with like Reddish, for example, uh, or gone with just a high upside player, really confused me. So, I mean, that's just my personal take. Is I don't think they should have taken Jackson Hayes there. Also,
I
didn't think Jordan. I don't think Jordan Poole should have gotten drafted in the first round. So I don't
I
really
I
see.
didn't have him getting drafted at all.
I
Um,
I was I had him at like 56 because like I
like
was
yeah,
like
I saw him like if I were. It seemed like a lot of the consensus was he's best case in the 50s, and yet
yeah.
that really confused me, especially for an organization that has been pretty good with the draft as Golden State. That definitely confused me. I
Oh yeah.
agree with you. I agree with you totally about the Jackson Hayes pick. Like, if you want to take, if you want to draft for fit, you know what? Okay, why don't you trade down like 5 to 10 spots, maybe like 5 to 7 spots, realistically, for Jackson Hayes. I do love the pick that they had at 17 with Nikhil Alexander Walker. I was surprised that he fell, frankly, to 17. But I'm with you. I definitely feel like they could have gone for
Yeah.
either just a higher upside player or just an asset or a player who had higher stock at 8 rather than Jackson Hayes.
Couple of other things. So staying out of like the top 5, top 10 because that's easy to talk about. I love what Miami did with the Tyler Hero pick. We both like
Same.
Hero, but um, basically Hero wasn't viewed that highly because he has a negative wingspan in that his wingspan is 3 inches shorter than his height. So in like the modern NBA, everyone's like kind of jerking off like wingspan, like he's this long or this long. And I like how Miami was like, nah, this dude can shoot, he can play. We're gonna take him no matter what.
Yeah,
So I like
and
that.
he's a gamer. He like
Yeah.
he's very competitive. Like you saw him, like you and I have talked so many times about this, but like in the first game of the season against Duke, Duke just straight up was awful and looked lost on defense. And by the end of the year, he was getting in passing lanes. He was like really making his man work. Played excellent defense on Fletcher McGee, and the fact that he was able to improve, like you said, he doesn't have great measurables like physically, but I think that's an encouraging sign that he tries and he wants to defend.
Um, Then I'd like to talk about like the Celtics for like just a second. I was very confused with the Langford pick. Didn't really
Same.
know why they did that. But I did absolutely love the Grant Williams pick. So they started off badly. The Matisse Thybulle was probably a really, really bad pick considering they have Marcus Smart. And
they traded him.
Oh, they did. You're right.
They traded to Philly, which
Yeah.
I just want to point out. Philadelphia traded up to draft a guard from Washington from the Celtics.
Yeah.
I feel like this happened 2 years ago. I feel like this happened kind of recently. And it didn't go so well for Philly. Maybe it'll work out better for Matisse in Philadelphia, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Go on.
I'm pretty low on Matisse. Pretty low.
Okay.
Because I'm like, if you can't shoot at all, like he doesn't, and he's actually, people say he's like a dog on defense, but he's only 6'5", and he's sub 200 pounds, so he's already 22, I think. So that's another issue. But I absolutely love the Grant Williams pick. I think it's going to be really, really good for them. I think they found themselves maybe not the next Draymond, but a guy kind of like that, which I think is kind of important for their team. Because I think if you drafted anyone on that Tennessee team, it helps like repair like the destruction that Kyrie wreaked on their chemistry last year. And I think drafting Tennessee guy was not only, Chris Williams is good, but I think it was maybe at least a semi-conscious effort to be like, all right, we need like high chemistry, like glue guys who can like pull our team together.
Right, and a guy who I'm pretty sure going into the NBA will not try to play more beyond what his role is, but will be very effective. Will be very effective at his role.
So kind of like the opposite. I mean, all power to Jason Tatum, but like, there was a whole things about like Gordon Hayward wanting to get shots because he wanted to get back in rhythm. Like Kyrie needs to get his shots. Like Jason Tatum obviously was just like ignoring plays and ISOing sometimes because he wanted his shots. And so having someone like that who will be like, all right, I don't care, I'll take 4 shots a game, I'll defend, I'll rebound, etc. I think that's great for them.
Yeah, so I agree. High character guy as well, like you said. I want to quickly touch upon one of your points earlier. You talk about like, trying to get, not always needing to you tend to lean more on the side of, hey, draft the best player available based on just the value of the asset, at that given point in time. I actually think, obviously, you and I both love the Miami 13th pick with getting Tyler Hero. One thing that I actually didn't even realize when I was watching the draft was they got the 32nd pick, and they took the guy from Stanford, KZ Okpala, who I think is great value for 32, considering in some scouts had him in that 18 to 25 range.
Yeah, they had him top 20. I saw that.
He's a little bit of he's very raw and very much like a project, but like if that's the guy you're rolling the dice on, a guy who seems to be, if he works out, like what he theoretically can be is like what so many teams covet in the league, and that is, these versatile wings who can hit an open shot but also guard multiple positions. And considering that the Heat have a really good player development, and seeing what they've done with like Josh Richardson, who was a late second round pick, and a guy like Tyler Johnson, who was undrafted, and the list goes on and on. I think that's a pick where I feel like in 5 years we could be like, wow, like Miami got an absolute steal at 32.
Yep. And now that we're in the second round, it's pretty important. Like I like to just talk about this stuff because it's like fun. I think Marial Shayok went to the Sixers. I think that because we know he can kind of hit the 3. Kyle Guy as well, obviously. Like we both like him, a decent pickup. And on the other side, all right, I love my boy Tremont Waters. He's really undersized, obviously. He's only 5'10", but I think he's a dog. I think he'll be good. On the other hand, other side of that, I don't really understand what the Nuggets were doing when they traded for Bol. Obviously, it was crazy, his fall. I don't really understand how bad it could be, but apparently like he has a degenerative disease, which is why teams aren't interested in him.
Wait, what?
Yeah, like he has like a degenerative foot, I think.
Oh,
I think that's what it was.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, so here, one second. The headline was, according to his medical, many people have degenerative knees. So basically, they cited they basically cited Brandon Roy, and everyone just freaked out. So I think the Hawks traded for Bruno Fernando, so
Mhm.
that was big. You and I both like Bruno Fernando. And
Yeah.
on the other side, I cannot believe Jalen Hands got drafted. I don't really understand that. He's not good at basketball. Don't really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any
On
second
that
round picks you like?
um so I obviously hit upon KZ Akpala, but I might be a little biased here, but I think that Mihei Oni from Yale going to Utah, I like that pick because he shot it well in college. He defended well, and he seemed to have he had a passable level of playmaking. Like he wasn't one of these wings. You know how like a lot of times in college, it's pretty rare for a wing to average over maybe 2.5 assists, but he averaged 4 assists his sophomore and junior year. And I know he wasn't playing the best competition in the Ivy League, but the Ivy League is definitely one of the better low major or mid majors, however you want to call it.
Yeah,
So I definitely like that pick because he's not like at this point. Utah needs guys who will not hurt their defense because their defense is already elite, but they need guys who can give them something on offense because that was the big problem in the playoffs. And taking a chance on a guy like this versatile 6'7" wing in the end of the second round, I kind of like. But I really like Admiral Schofield to the Wizards. Very similar to kind of what you were saying about Grant Williams, who ironically was his teammate.
yeah,
The Wizards
exactly.
locker room has been it's been a shit show, or it's been dramatic to say the least the last couple seasons. So I think with Admiral Schofield, you're getting a guy who doesn't care about like you said, doesn't care about how many shots he takes, just wants to help, be a positive contributing factor to winning and a high character guy. And so I think I like that pick as well. Other than that, I definitely agree with you on some of the ones you mentioned. So yeah, Shayok, I definitely think Philadelphia could use some shooting. One guy you didn't mention was I think Eric Pascal going to the Warriors is like
Yeah,
literally a perfect fit.
perfect fit.
He
Yeah,
he played in a very similar offense at Villanova, and he was pretty good at Villanova. So I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. I was surprised that Cody Barton went as high as he did, but
yeah,
but it was also to the Hornets, and I know that Michael Jordan historically he really values. He's drafted a lot of guys based on having like a really good game or two in the tournament. So that kind of, to say the least, Jordan is just kind of he hasn't really changed. It seems like he's good going with a very similar approach with the guys that he
yeah.
likes. How do you feel about Carson Edwards on the Celtics?
I see. I don't like it. And the reason I say that is because we both know Carson is a very, very. So I think he had like the third or fourth usage percentage in the NCAA this year, which is, as I said in my pod, I was like, they're going to ride or die with Carson. And that's, as I said, I was like, he's going to either drop a 40 piece or he's not going to do anything at all. And so those, I mean, it's kind of like the Russell Westbrook conundrum. Like sometimes he'll have like 40, 10, and 10. You'll be like, this guy's insane. And sometimes he'll have like a 10-point game. But like you take the highs to the lows. But the key to that is that you have to give him the reins every single minute of it, every single minute that he's in. And I don't think that's possible with Carson Edwards. I just don't think he can, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely feel like
I just
Boston
don't think it's a
is the
good
ideal
because
situation.
exactly. Like I feel like if he was on like a team where he could be handed the reins and like just been like, all right, do whatever you want in like your minutes, you'll figure it out. Kind of like Colin Sexton this year. I think that could have been good, but the Celtics need to compete now, and so they can't afford that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Kind of moving on from the draft, but still talking about these players that are that are entering the NBA. Let's break down the Rookie of the Year race.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, do you think that obviously Zion is going to be the favorite?
yeah.
Theoretically, the number one pick should always be the favorite. I know last year was a little different, but for the most part, the number one pick usually should be the favorite. Who? And so I guess that's a two-part question. One, do you agree with that notion that he should be the favorite for Rookie of the Year? And then B, who I guess is behind is maybe second,
Okay.
third, etc.
So I'm gonna answer all those questions. Then I'm gonna give you like a kind of sleeper, or not really a sleeper, but like someone outside the top three. So first, Zion should be the favorite for three reasons. One, he has like obviously he's the best player in the draft, right? He's the best player in the draft. Best player should always be like the favorite, right? As you said.
Yep.
Number two, he has like the it factor that makes him like super exciting and unique to watch. So
Yep.
like sometimes like you'll have like all right, like for example, DeAndre Ayton last year should have been more in the rookie race with Trey and Doncic, but all he did was get 18 and 10 every game with some good post moves and good okay defense.
Yeah,
And
it was
he
a
just
very
ate up
yeah,
boards.
it was a very boring 18 to 10.
Yeah, like it's in his statistical profile, he was very, very good, and he's actually very valuable. But like, no one wants to watch that. So Zion also has that going for him. And number three, the Pelicans compared to everyone else, like the Knicks and the Grizzlies, will be in playoff contention at least. Like they won't. What I'm saying is they're not going to be a 20-win team. Like they're actually going to be in it. They're going to be pushing for it. And so once you're in the play, if you're a rookie helping your team to the playoffs, it's a like Donovan Mitchell, and Ben Simmons, it's a big up for you. So obviously, I think the next two guys are John Moran and RJ Barrett, just because they're going to have the reins the moment they walk in. Like Jaws, that I'm super excited to watch Ja and Jaren Jackson play together. Yeah, I'm beyond excited to watch that. And then RJ Barrett is going to have full control of like the Knicks offense. But I would look out for a little bit of Kobe White. I think Kobe White's going to be surrounded by a decent amount of talent. I mean, Matt, you know how much I love Lauri Markkanen. He's my guy. And I think, playing with like Levine will help a lot. Wendell Carter will help a lot. And so I think Kobe White will be able to play, I think, above his, not above his skill level, but better than he would have on other teams in that situation. So I think Kobe White might be like a little bit of a dark horse there.
Yeah. I definitely. Okay. So I agree with you about, you have to have Ja and RJ in the race just because they're going to have, their opportunities. They're going to get their minutes and their shots, and you're going to have their usage. I guess on a similar note, I guess one guy I think should be, I might even put, I'll have to make this assessment after summer league, but I also think that often a lot of times with the rookie, when it comes to the rookies or the rookie of the years, it's like you said, guys who definitely can play and like have usage or enough usage to where they put up numbers, and they also are, generally speaking, the point guards tend to be a little more exciting than, like you said, like a DeAndre Ayton. So I think one guy that, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this, is one guy who I think probably maybe top 5 in the conversation. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins Rookie of the Year just off of sheer numbers, is Darius Garland.
Oh, so I'm actually against you.
Okay, and let me guess, your thought process is that Sexton is the fact that he's going to be sharing with Sexton?
A couple of reasons. One, I think so. Darius Garland is undersized, which is it's not like a big no for me, but it's a problem. Like, especially when you're a rookie, it's an extra level of like it's an extra threshold that you have to pass to play in the NBA. It's just harder to do it. 2 is that like we don't really understand how the usage is going to come. As you said about Sexton. 3, he hasn't really played organized basketball at probably almost a year. So that's also kind of an issue for him. Also, Matt, I'm not saying he's going to bust, but I'm saying these are all like pitfalls that he has to get past. And 4, I mean, like the Cavs are just bad, man.
Yeah.
Like, especially if they do the right thing and trade Love. Like, I mean, it's the right thing to do. Like, they don't need Love anymore. Someone needs more than they do, and they can get assets. But they're bad. And it's hard to be like a Rookie of the Year when you're on a bad team.
That's true. Okay, so I'm actually with you on a lot of the pitfalls you mentioned, but how should I say this? I actually think that I'm actually lower on Garland as a long-term pro than I guess most people would be, since considering he was a top 5 pick. But I don't think that he would. I don't think he's going to win Rookie of the Year. But it wouldn't surprise me if he just got enough. He's a good shooter, and B, if compare that with like the usage and the fact that he's going to be on a young team not winning a lot of games, that he'll be able to put up the sheer numbers that put him in the top 3 in voting. Wouldn't surprise me. A little bit like Trey, although he's a lot worse of a playmaker compared to Trey. But I don't know. Like I think about like what is the rookie of the year isn't always the best player in the draft class, right? So I'm thinking 2012 Damian Lillard, who is definitely an all-star and like a superstar, but Davis was in that draft. But Damian Lillard had the usage and the sheer numbers, and Anthony Davis missed like 15 games, and so the rookie of the year goes to Lillard, despite that the Blazers missed the playoffs. Then the year after that, though it was an awful draft, Michael Carter-Williams wins Rookie of the Year. High usage, puts up the numbers. Team's awful, but like he has the numbers to get him in the conversation and then eventually win it. Next year after that, Andrew Wiggins, same deal. Team is awful, but he has the sheer usage and the volume to get numbers that make people vote for him, and then he wins it, you know? So I could see Garland going in that formula to at least be in like the top 3 of voting.
Oh, I mean, I see it. I just don't know how much at this point. I don't know how much they're gonna give the ball to Sexton versus him, and so that's why.
Also fair. That's also fair. Yeah, I personally I'm lower on Garland as like a long-term pro. Like I don't think he's gonna. I personally wouldn't see him as like a multi-time All-Star. But hey, I could be wrong. But like some of the red flags you mentioned are what kind of make me hesitant about believing that he's gonna be this 5-time All-Star, but that's just my projection, obviously.
I mean, yeah, I see it. I do see it. I just don't think he's top 5 for me, but I see like a path for him to go there, based on like historical. Yeah,
for sure. Who else? I'm trying to think. I definitely would have to agree with you. Zion definitely hits all the kind of traditional check boxes that you need to win Rookie of the Year. And obviously, like you said, he is, at least for now, we deem him as the best player, and the best player should be the favorite. But like you said, I definitely have to agree with you. I definitely think that if anyone's going to unseat him, it's going to be one of these point guards that has the ball on their hands. So like you said, Kobe White, actually, the more I think about it, the more I kind of like the thought of him unseating Zion as the Rookie of the Year.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clearly Zion. I think it's just one of those years where he's just going to blow up. I will say, though, I don't think he's going to put up like people compare. I don't think he's going to put up like the same LeBron type stats, but I think he can get close. But it's pretty high. We haven't had a guy this good in I think a long time, maybe since
AD
LeBron or since at least AD.
Okay,
Yeah, I was saying during the season, I thought during the season he got to at least AD hype level, so I thought it was about equal between them.
Yeah, he's definitely more exciting than AD. Like AD was awesome.
Yes,
but
AD was just a defensive freak. Yeah, out.
There's more of a flashy like wow factor to Zion. But okay, so moving on from the Rookie of the Year, and this happens in, I wouldn't say every draft, but most drafts. So I actually didn't put this on the rundown, so this is a little bit of a curveball. Which non-lottery pick do you think ends up carving out like a 15-year as a really good like starter, but like a 3rd or 4th option on a good team / like a really effective role player?
I think it's Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
Okay.
I always liked him.
Yep.
I think.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think he has really good measurables, which is a good start. It's a good start. And I think I liked how he stepped up in Robinson's I think 15 game outage during the Virginia Tech season. He kept them afloat. Yeah, he had some down games, but he's also very, very good at defense, and he has good upside on offense. He plays better when he doesn't have to be the guy in charge, which is good. But he can always like take over for like 5 minutes, and I think he's headed to New Orleans, right?
Yep.
In the trade. Yeah, so I think think you can carve out like kind of a 6-man role for them. I think that could be big.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. Another couple candidates for this criteria, I would say like a Grant Williams for the reasons we talked about earlier. Ty Jerome, uh, and I guess one guy in the second round who I could see becoming like a starter on like the fourth or fifth guy starter on like a good team. I personally really like Nick Claxton from Georgia. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I like a couple things I like from him is that he seems to play with like high motor. He's like effort is not like a big question mark, which is something that I think is generally a good sign for like a second round pick. On top of that, he showed at the in some of the clips I was watching, it seemed like he moved pretty well laterally for a big guy. He's like a power forward center. So, and then a lot of people were saying that he could be a guy that could switch, guard multiple positions. So he's not going to be one of these big men that you can just play off the floor in a playoff matchup. So I think those are some. I think those are ingredients to being like a second round pick who overachieves, I guess is what I'm getting at.
That's it. Yep.
And then before we move on, do we both agree that it was I guess I don't know just what the right phrase is, like bad drafting or whatever the case may be, that Keldon Johnson fell to 29 to the Spurs?
Yeah, come on, Matt. Okay, some people. Okay, so I think this happens. So just a kind of like a tangent is that this happens all the time in the NFL, where like an okay player will fall to like a kind of good team, and you'll just assume that they're going to be good, right? Yeah. So like this happens all the time with the Patriots. They're like, oh damn, Billy got his hands on another gem, and then he ends up busting out in 3 years because there's a reason they fall. But somehow, some way, this always happens to the Spurs, and they actually take it. They actually like turn them into good players. Like Derek White, I was just like, damn it, they got Derek White. He's gonna be good, and he was good. I didn't understand it. Their player development is so spectacularly good. Like I assume every like semi-good like mid first rounder who falls to them is going to be good, and it almost always happens. So you're right. I think Keldon Johnson can actually be really, really good. And they keep just picking up guys they need, right? They're like, we need a swingman, and they just pick themselves up a swingman. So good for them.
I mean, he plays hard. It wasn't like he had a bad year at Kentucky. It's just that PJ Washington took a leap. Tyler Hero had like such a steep improvement within the season, but like start to finish, Keldon Johnson was pretty solid the whole year, and I guess there's less. He didn't have that superstar. He didn't flash like NBA superstar potential like you might have hoped for a guy who's an All-American going to Kentucky. But like I don't know, like he was solid the whole year. There was nothing that indicated that he would suck as an NBA player. And then he just slides to the Spurs at 29. I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. I was thinking exactly like you. I was like, come on, like y'all really gonna let the Spurs get another like quality NBA player who they can develop into like a solid starter, like
unbelievable.
Yeah. Before we kind of transition away from the draft, I'm curious. I haven't talked to you much about this, but one hot topic of debate after the draft was comparing the arc of like Darius Bazley and his journey to the draft to that of Nasir Little. And I know that you are someone who definitely you're definitely like saying, I know, having based on our conversation in the past about like Zion and whatnot, when he got hurt, you are definitely like pro get your money, like don't fuck up your stock. Like you definitely a little more, you definitely have that kind of perspective on that. So I'm curious, like what were your overall thoughts on like the Bazley versus Little situation?
So essentially just a quick recap of what Bazley did. Bazley first said he was going to bypass the NCAA, which I was on board for. And then he said he was going to enter the G League. And I was like, oh, this got interesting. Then he dropped out of the G League and he decided to, I think it was train with New Balance in order so that he could
internship. Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially
internship.
He got paid like $1 million to just ball in a New Balance gym. So
And he did some testing with their shoes and he had some input on design. But yeah, for the most part, he was training for the year and no one saw him play against any competition.
So I think the way he went about this was wrong. I think it's asking too much of NBA front offices to extrapolate like random high school highlights
Yeah,
to a top, because remember he was a 5-star recruit. I believe he was top 10 in the class.
he was 13th in the
Okay.
ESPN big
Yeah.
board.
So he theoretically should have been in the lottery. Obviously, like things change. He could have gone up. He could have gone down. But uh, for him, I think he got drafted where he should have, just because it's basically impossible to ask an NBA GM to just be like, all right, this is what we saw in high school. We're gonna assume he got better playing in a New Balance facility. We're gonna take him at 15, or we're gonna take him at 10. Um, and I remember I see you're on the write up compared to Nasir Little, and he dropped even further than Darius Baisley, right? He
Yeah,
went
he's
25.
two spots.
He
Two
went
spots
under
after.
Ty. Yeah, and with the guy in between was Ty Jerome. So,
Yeah,
um, three completely different paths. You got one dude who stayed a while, one dude who was one and done, and one dude who skipped it entirely. I think Baisley should have just. I think going to the Australian League might be a better look, which I think we're going to see this year. We got a couple guys. I think LiAngelo is going,
and then RJ Hampton.
and then RJ Hampton is obviously the hype guy, and then LiAngelo is like the name. So I think it'll be interesting to see how RJ Hampton does there, because I think getting your money is important, and I agree with that. But you also just can't. There's like a balance, and you can't just completely stop playing basketball. So,
Yeah.
um, I felt bad for Nasir Little though. I
So did
saw why.
I.
I mean,
I do
like,
think I do think he's in a good situation in Portland where
yeah.
the team is good, but they also could use help on the wing. But
Same thing in OKC for Darius.
yeah,
Like
that's true.
they have a lot of like guys who could, like, they have Diallo and they have Adams and they have Morris, and they have just a bunch of guys who are like long, like Terrence Ferguson. They just have guys
Ferguson, yeah.
who are just like kind of like wings forwards who could just play what Baisley plays. So he's not going to be shoved into a starting spot right away, which is good. And they've also shown they've shown like good player development. I think not obviously comparable to the Spurs, but maybe a couple tiers below, where they've turned guys who I like Terrence Ferguson, Diallo, or Andre Roberson, or guys like that into like semi-competent players at least.
Yeah.
So I think there's hope for Baisley. I think it'll be good for him to play there. And
Yeah.
obviously they have Paul George, so maybe you can show him the ropes or something.
Yeah. Quick. This is like more. I didn't know. I actually didn't know this about Baisley, but he's from Cincinnati, and so he originally committed to Ohio State to play, and then he decommitted, and after he decommitted, this was when Ohio State started. The fan base started to get a little antsy, and they were like, hey, how come we're not getting those top recruits anymore, et cetera, et cetera. They missed the tournament. All those things happen. Darius Baisley decommits, and shortly after, Thad Matta gets fired.
Yeah. I mean, they got Holman, right?
Yep. And then, I've heard Mark Titus joke that Darius Baisley got Thad Matta fired. I know it's not a direct correlation, but it was a contributing thing. Just like, hey, how come we used to get these guys, now we don't? And then he commits to Syracuse, decommits to go to the G League. And what I was reading was that he was going to go to the G League, but then he realized that he might get his lunch eaten alive in the G League.
Yeah.
So as a result, he hired Rich Paul, and they came up with this whole New Balance internship idea.
Essentially, I think I almost think it's funny, but I think he saw the Jeremy Lin and Danny Green interviews, where he said because everyone's trying to make the NBA so bad, or just trying to get that two-way contract, just because it's so much more money. It's not really as much basketball as it is football, where they will just hit you. Like if you're like a player, like an NBA player who's rehabbing the G League, or like a high draft pick in the G League, so they know you're basically guaranteed to like at least get a shot at an NBA roster just because you're kind of established, versus like a bunch of guys who walk not off the street, but guys who've never gotten their shot. So they'll basically make your life hell. And he was like, yeah, as a 19-year-old, he only weighs 200 pounds for a 6'9" forward. So, not the biggest guy in the room.
Yeah.
So I think he made the right decision by not going to the G League.
I agree.
but I think I think that's why I think RJ Hampton did his research. And he was like, all right, well, Europe is too crazy. The G League is like, because Europe is like real basketball. Like
Yeah.
it's a whole thing. Like it's very, very intense. And they're like, yeah, that's not right for me. And then they were like, the G League's a little bit too physical. I think Australia's the way to go.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's interesting, to
Yeah.
say the least. So I guess I think this will all blow over in I think 3 years. I think is when Adam Silver said, when high schoolers are allowed to enter again, and then
Yeah. And that'll
you'll
be a new age of scouting, because then we're gonna have like scouts and fans like us.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to be looking at these YouTube clips of dudes on the AAU circuit.
So yeah, so I mean, it's definitely better. It's like a good time to bring it back because drafting high schoolers back in the '90s was insane. Like you were literally like shooting in the dark because we didn't have near this close to like the technology we did. So we have a ton of technology. Like we have kids who are using like like the heart monitoring stuff and the speed stuff, and they have like balls that track their spin, like balls track spin rate and like rotation angle and stuff like that. So there's definitely better ways to project high schoolers, but it's still gonna be crazy when like some dude out of like, I don't know, like Midlands, Texas or something busts really hard because he just dunked over kids for 30 points a game. So
yeah. I mean, like there's always going to be. It'll just be interesting because there's always, and when you go back and you look at those ESPN rankings, there's always a couple guys who just weren't actually as good as they were said to be when they were coming out of high school. And so, once those guys start leaving early, like leaving straight out of high school, and some NBA team that's in the lottery takes them, like that'll just be interesting to see because it's like there's going to be way more, I think, volatility with regards to how your lottery picks, what result your lottery pick can yield. But at the end of the day, I am like pro player freedom per se, so like they should be able to get their paycheck coming out the gate,
Yeah.
Yeah. As for Nasir Little, I thought Nasir Little, I mean, like, he didn't make the wrong decision, like, he was a top 5 recruit, and he had an okay year at Carolina. But the thing about Carolina was that, like, he was playing behind 2 very good college basketball players that were seniors in Luke May and Cam Johnson. So it wasn't like he was going to just take all their minutes, especially not with Roy playing to like win college basketball games. And then on top of that, like the intel was that like they said that he was very talented and whatnot, but he had never, he'd never had to like defend with much IQ in high school. Like in high school, like defense was just, oh, I am faster, stronger, and bigger than you. Like I'm fine. Whereas you come to college and it's like, okay, now you have to think about rotations and hedging and whatnot. And so apparently that was a big problem for him. But so I don't think he made the wrong decision, like going to Carolina. He obviously his stock got hurt, and he was better off if he just like hid himself from the world. But I don't know. Like I don't think it should be an indictment on like this is why college is a bad thing per se, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the college clearly helps some people. I think so. I think he was like, Roy is good at developing like front court players, which to an extent is true, but he needs 3 years to develop them. Mm-hmm. And that was his mistake. And if you really wanted to be developed 1 year in a front court player, where do you go, Matt? Kentucky. Yeah, you roll Kentucky, you run fast, you play hard, you get a lot of points, and then you get drafted in the lottery. It's a pretty simple formula, and it works. So.
Well, especially if you're a top 5 guy.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like it might not work out that way for, I don't know, Nick Richards, who's still in school, but yeah, no.
I mean, like Cal will make sure that you don't drop 20 spots. That's what Cal will do.
I guess the exception would be Skal Labissiere.
Yeah, but Skal was weird, dude.
Skal was a weird year. That was a weird year.
That was just
Sure. Honestly, Nasir Little's his slide in the draft reminded me a lot of Skal Labissiere's because both of them were top recruits. Both of them didn't meet expectations in their freshman year, but both of them were still considered to be in that late lottery range heading into the draft. And then they both end up going in the late 20s. So found that interesting that, Scal. Someone asked, like, has a slide like Nasir Little's ever happened for a guy like of that caliber coming out of high school? And my first answer was like, oh, this reminds me a lot of Scal. And literally, Scal went 26, Nasir Little went 25.
Yeah.
Now they're teammates, actually.
I mean, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that'll just be an interesting, like, I just thought it was an interesting talking point. That whole, like, one guy literally hid from, or he but he didn't play in competition. And the other guy.
Yeah, it was very comparable to Yi Jianlian playing against a chair. The legendary chair video.
I need to watch that video.
It's wild.
I am not familiar.
Are you hip to like the it's just like a story, and then it was confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
It's hilarious.
I have heard
it's a hilarious story.
I have heard about it.
Yeah, one day it's hilarious.
Yeah. Okay, so kind of moving on from the draft, but still talking about these players. Not just the rookies though. Let's take New Orleans out of this because I think New Orleans is too easy of an answer. Which summer league team are you really looking forward to watching? So that will likely include a couple undrafted free agents, and then obviously draft picks for guys who are either in their upcoming rookies, sophomores, maybe a couple third-year guys.
So I'm gonna name 3 teams. Obviously, the Hawks. The Hawks are just an easy pick.
Yeah, even if I don't think Trey's gonna play, but even then, they're still gonna have what?
No, they're gonna have
Bruno, Hunter,
Reddish at least, which is going to be super fun to watch. You just have a ton of shooting, ton of athleticism. I don't know. I don't think they'll let Collins play either, but everyone else should be definitely fun to watch.
Yep.
Second team is the Suns. I am interested as to what Cam Johnson is going to be like. I am excited to see. I believe Ty Jerome is now on the Suns.
Mm-hmm.
So I am excited to see Ty Jerome play. And I think the Suns still have a bunch of young guys who can. I think they'll let Josh Jackson play because he's been bad. I don't know.
Yeah.
But they still have guys who they'll. I don't know. I'm just excited to see. Even though I thought the Cam Johnson pick was wrong, I didn't not like him. I do like.
I agree. I think right player, wrong spot, like draft spot.
Yeah, but now that the draft is over, I can now be just excited at the player himself, and I am excited to see Ty Jerome and Cam Johnson play together.
Sure. Yeah.
Like I just think it'll be cool. And as a third team, I want to see the Grizzlies because I think they're gonna let Jaren Jackson play because he was injured a lot last year. So playing in the summer league, I think would be a good ramp up for him, so he doesn't just get thrown to the NBA blender right after he got hurt. And so I think we might see a little bit. I think they're going to limit his minutes, but I think we're going to get to see 10 to 15 minutes of Ja and Jaren Jackson play together. So
I do like the sound of that.
Yeah, just a little taste before the season,
Yeah. To add a couple more, I definitely like, as we talked about earlier, Miami.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons.
Chicago. I mean, they always have fun summer league teams. Miami.
Yeah.
They always have fun guys to watch. It's fun.
That's true. Chicago because of Kobe White, and I think Wendell Carter would probably play.
Yes, I think the ones who won't play are Levine and Markkanen. I think are the only two.
Yeah.
We'll let Don Valentine.
Also, the Bulls got Daniel Gafford, who before the season was projected as a potential late lottery guy, and then he didn't do any. He didn't have a bad year. He just didn't really improve much. It was a little bit like Robert Williams, how Robert Williams stayed an extra year and didn't really help his stock. But beyond that, I'm trying to think. Does Charlotte have a fun summer league team? They'll have Miles Bridges, PJ Washington.
You think they'll let Monk play?
Ooh, mate, I wouldn't mind seeing.
Yeah, then they'll have some guys playing just to see what it's like.
Yeah,
that'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's another interesting summer league situation. They don't have a rookie that's going to play in summer league, but Orlando, curious to see if Mo Bamba considering that Vucevic might leave in free agency.
Yeah.
he might be asked to have a lot more of a responsibility next year, and we don't know if he's ready, or we don't know like what he is as an NBA player yet. But obviously, there was a lot of intrigue about him last year, so
I think
curious to see if he plays.
I think they might let eyes. And most important, I'm glad you mentioned Orlando because do you think they'll unleash a little bit of Fultz, or do you think they're going to keep him under wraps?
Ooh,
Because
I don't
I think it's a good
know.
idea, right, to play him in summer league so he doesn't just get
I
crapped
definitely
on
think it's
by
a good
NBA players.
idea. I definitely think it's a good idea. I mean, I think it's a good idea. Obviously, they'll probably have to get the thumbs up from him, and we just don't know what type of advice he's getting.
Yeah, I'm unsure, but if they roll out, three of their, I call them future, like their ideals for future starters, and Fultz, Isaac, and Bamba, that means we're seeing like 3/5 of like like what they want, of like what they want to turn their team into, with like I think Fournier and Gordon being the other two. But I am interested in like the Magic as a team as opposed to just their summer league team, seeing like what their front court of Isaac, Gordon, and Bamba is going to turn into. It's an interesting front court, to say the least.
It's interesting for sure. I guess while we're talking about Fultz, do you think Fultz will ever be like what do you project? What do you see? What if you had to bet on what Fultz is going to end up being? What would that be? Yeah.
It's tough, right? Like, because the issue is like now we're in this mode where we assume he can't shoot, and so we're going to start projecting to players like Rajon Rondo, for example, or Elfrid Payton. And so I'm not sure if I'm ready because the thing is I know he can. Like I know because I've seen him for like obviously in his high school days and at Washington. Like I know he can shoot. It's not like Lonzo where like you and I could tell we're like, yeah, this dude's gonna struggle in the NBA just because like you can tell when some people's shooting forms are bad. You're like,
Yeah.
damn, like Sean Marion, what are you doing? Like it's some things are clear and obvious, right?
Yeah.
But for Fultz, I'm just so confused as to what happened. Like even now it's a lot of just holes and stuff not fitting together, and I don't really understand. Is it more psychological? Does he have a degenerative shoulder disease? Did he just dislocate it and it wasn't healing correctly? Like I have no clue as to what actually happened. And so I'm not ready to give up on him yet. And so I mean, obviously, like people were comparing him to like upper tier all NBA players. Obviously I'm not gonna compare him to that, but I think he could be like, you know, I think he could make an all-star team. I think he could. Obviously, Mike Conley hasn't made an all-star team, but I think he could hit Conley level, where like he can drop 20, 25 points a game, but he's really just like an 18.7 assist player, and he'll get you. He'll just be consistent week in, week out. Because the reason I say that is because I think Fultz can be above average to great on defense. I think he has the measurables too, and that's obviously what Conley was known for in his grindhouse days. On top of everything, he delivered great defense week in, week out. So
Yeah.
I think his ceiling, as opposed to being like, like Russell Westbrook or Chris Paul from when he was drafted number one, to just Mike Conley. Obviously, still a great player. I love Mike Conley. He was one of my favorite players. But I think that's where he is right now. That's his ceiling. That's what I hope he can become.
Okay. That's fair. So I do think you bring up a great point about defense. I do obviously he showed promise on the defensive end, and he obviously has great measurables and I guess athletic ability to suggest that he should be, because he's a bigger guard who's by no means slow. So, but that said, I guess my projection of him was I think his best case. I don't know if he's ever gonna quite be like the floor general that Mike Conley is, but I do like that kind of that 18-7 type of comparison, like a solid like Mike Conley, where he's like just this solid guard. But yeah, I don't know. Like I do think that D'Angelo Russell will end up being the better player between the two.
Yeah.
Between him and Fultz.
Still upsets me that the Lakers traded him to get off
and it's funny
to get
because
off Mozgov's contract.
And it's funny because you're seeing all these reports of like, oh, the Lakers would be open to getting D'Angelo. It's like,
Yeah.
just makes me laugh. It makes me
Yeah.
laugh because y'all literally had him.
And I can
Anyhow,
only I can only dream of a D'Angelo, De'Aaron Fox 1-2.
you know I was pulling for that.
Yeah.
Obviously it wasn't gonna happen once D'Angelo got traded and then they drafted Lonzo. But that was always my what those were two players I always thought the Lakers should have had. Obviously they drafted D'Angelo, but I always said, you know me, I said from day one, actually from like day -50, because like way
Yeah.
before the draft, I was saying Fox over Ball. But speaking of, I guess, watching guys in college and, you know, coming up with opinions before they're in the NBA, I guess, so we're at like the 50-minute mark. One thing you and I talked about, a couple days ago off, like through chat, was this idea, was, trying to get more comprehensive, or not, yeah, I guess more comprehensive scouting on like the non-NBA, so like the two levels below the NBA or just non-NBA levels. And so I actually kind of wanted to tease that on the podcast a little bit briefly. I guess I'll start it by saying that next year, and I'm sure you'll follow suit, but I'm hoping that next year you and I, we can, on the podcast, we can not only watch games that are, in not outside of the NBA, but also like really discuss and like start to break down like how a prospect translates into the NBA, how their skills translate into the NBA and whatnot. And I'm hoping we can do more than just college, right? Because this past year we watched a lot of college, we discussed a lot of college, but I'm hoping next year we might be able to branch out a little more, thinking maybe little bit of like G League,
Yeah.
international,
So
especially with LaMelo and RJ going to Australia. Yeah, take it away.
about that, I was literally thinking about that after we had our like discussion. I was like, you know what? I'm tired of seeing someone like Goga Bitadze. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Like going like 10
Yeah,
spots higher than someone I definitely know like Ty Jerome or Nasir Little. And I'm tired of like not knowing like exactly what he can do. So I feel like that's not only an issue for me, but like when people are like, oh, Sekou Doumbia is my draft on top 5, I'm like, Sekou? Like what? Like how do you? What? Like
literally,
what is happening?
I don't know what Sekou looks like.
Yeah, I
No
was like,
disrespect to
yo,
Sekou, but I don't know what he looks like.
like like this dude I was like, all right, you know what? This year I'm gonna try to like at least like not only for like me and you, but like I feel like this is a problem for a lot of like casual NBA draft or even more than casual. Like even people like us who like try to like follow it like deeply every week, it's still hard for them. Like when you have guys like Doumbia or Samanic or Bitadze getting drafted in the top 20, and you're like, I don't know what's happening. I think it would be important because I'm going to try to watch like at least one of their international games a week, and just see not
Yeah,
only their highlights but just see how they play. So like pick out one guy, watch his weekly play, and just like talk about it on the podcast, just so people aren't like in the dark. Like we can even have like a small write up about.
absolutely.
But like it's important that like as you said, we branch out not only into the NCAA, which most people watch, but stuff that barely anyone watches because it's just like
Yeah,
well, too much work, etc.
yeah, yeah. And like I said this to you the other day on chat, but like to just kind of put it on wax, like I feel like last year, and this is something that I do a lot as like just a fan of college basketball, and we're both big fans of college basketball, but I think I did this a lot where like I'll watch like just who's relevant in college basketball because I want to know like contention for the ones who could be hot and who could get hot and like be a Cinderella. But I think next year, now that UVA's won the national championship and whatnot, and I feel like next year, and with our podcast, I feel like I want to start watching college basketball more from the perspective of like, okay, who are some interesting like prospects that I'm watching right now that could potentially play meaningful NBA and like change the core outcome of like a do or die playoff game.
Yeah,
So
no, without a doubt. I think so.
yeah,
I've talked to you about this before. So for me personally, No, I know it hurts sometimes, but I'm kind of a downer when Matt gets hype about college basketball because I'm just like, yeah, but like I don't really see it. Matt's like, yo, this kid is going off. I'm like, and like, or I look at like an like NCAA team. I'm like, yeah, but they're not playing like an NBA team. What? So my Matt versus my view is more college than more NBA. But I think it's a good idea to start looking at it, just for one season from a pure like scouts perspective, just see what it's like,
Sure. Yeah. And I think one thing that inspired me to kind of like think about having this more scout take and then transfer it to the podcast is that this is not to brag or anything. This is kind of a story. And I told you this, you probably remember this actually, but in October or so, maybe September last year, I was just looking at a mock draft casually on like NBADraft.net. I'll give credit where it's due. Shout out to them. And I remember looking through the mock draft, and normally you just see the top 10 picks are all just the top freshmen. So I was like, okay, yeah. Who was it? It was like RJ Barrett was number 1. I was like, yeah, okay. Zion Williamson, number 2. Okay, yeah. Cameron. I was going down, and I was like, okay, I've seen all these names. They're all McDonald's All-Americans. And I remember hitting 12 on that list, and I see John Morant. And I was like, and he's not a high school player. Let me check. And I see, okay, Murray State, really interesting. And then I, do a little more research. I'm like, oh wait, I actually watched him play in the NCAA tournament against West Virginia, and I was like, that's interesting. And I do a little research, and so then I remember explicitly like taking note, and I looked at Murray State's schedule, and I was like, let me see when they're playing like high level competition, and I'm gonna try to watch that game. And I remember I circled the game Murray State Auburn, where they played at Auburn, and I actually watched that game. And this was before Ja like exploded onto the national scene. Not to say that I get credit or any. I saw him becoming what he became, but it was interesting to be like, okay, there's this guy who's not a typical blue blood who could be a very good NBA player, and I took time. I like explicitly scheduled a time where I was going to watch him play against high level competition. So I thought like I need to do more of that, like. Going not always just latching on to like who is nationally relevant in college basketball. Because you and we're always going to watch our Dukes and Kentuckys and Carolinas and Kansases. But it's like sometimes it's like when you look at the NBA, like obviously the best players aren't all Duke, Carolina, Kentucky, and Kansas. In fact, we just saw an NBA playoffs or an NBA finals where the finals MVP went to San Diego State. The two best players on the Warriors who played went to Washington State. Davidson. So it's like,
I mean, you're right. I think it'll be
Fred Van,
for sure.
Yeah, and so on top of that, like I definitely want to expand beyond just like college. So like I said, I'm gonna try to watch the National Basketball League in Australia when it's LaMelo versus RJ. RJ Hampton. And I'll see. G League. It's nice because G League does online streaming, so they do. I think either YouTube or Facebook. So that's like pretty easy to catch just in passing. And that like I said with college, obviously kind of changing up how you're viewing, watching, and observing the game. But on top of that, also just like not always just looking at the blue bloods. You know what I mean? So guys who aren't going to be in the NCAA tournament, because I feel like I barely watched Markelle Fultz when he was in college. And as a result, I didn't have as much of an opinion on him heading into the draft. I just kind of went with the flow and based on what all the scouts were saying. But I feel like it would have been cool if I had watched more of him and developed my own opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's exciting. I think. So basically, the idea is tune in, guys. We're going to do some stuff that hopefully not a lot of other people are doing. So we'll be providing some really original content on top of the stuff on top of the stuff we do normally. So should be fun.
Yeah, and I know that at the end of the day, you can always watch game tape and rewatch stuff, but I'm personally a big fan of actually seeing stuff like in person because I feel like there's just something about like the feel of it and like you feel like you're part of the game, and as a result, like when you're observing them, I don't know, it's really hard to put into words, but I've always really enjoyed like kind of watching the game in person and then kind of like drawing a couple like observations from there while I'm watching in person. So one thing that's really nice is that this coming year, UVA's home schedule is like super nice. They get all the best ACC opponents in John Paul Jones. So I'm definitely looking forward to, hopefully getting tickets for some of those games and maybe getting, being able to slip a little bit of, a couple lines and, takes about, Cole Anthony or Vernon Carey Jr. and whoever else, comes through town. Jordan Nwora on Louisville is another one who's this upperclassman who's, could be a great NBA prospect and whatnot. And on top of that, you and I have discussed this. We are nowhere near finalizing this, but you and I have talked about a potential weekend trip to next year.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. No,
yeah.
I'm very down.
Yeah,
very excited.
Yeah, obviously we need to see the schedules come out and then figure out what's up with us. But like, I think that'd be really cool. I'm just putting this, just floating the idea out into the universe. But like, watching the Memphis Tigers play, podcast from Memphis, watch the Memphis Tigers play, and if possible, catch a Grizzlies game because, like you said, John Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr. That's going to be a really exciting team to watch next year.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it'll be fun. I hope. We'll just live pod from there, and it'll be pretty fun. I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm fully down for this.
I just wanted to kind of tease that on the podcast about us trying to beyond just like analyzing results and who's hot, whose stock is rising and whatnot, to us to diversify. I guess just diversify and expand our content. I think that'll be a really cool thing, and I think starting off by like just branching out how we're watching and scouting games and players, I think is a good starting point. So I just wanted to kind of tease that out there, and I think you and I are both really excited for that. For the chance to do that next year. Yeah.
All right. Cool.
So free agency's coming up. You and I will definitely talk, but I think we could probably get a podcast before or around the start of free agency. We'll talk off air about just figuring a time to do that. But yeah, I guess we're at like the 60. We're going a little over an hour. So you got any kind of last thoughts, parting thoughts?
No, I think that's it. I think we covered everything. That was good.
Great. Cool. Thanks for coming on and calling me or kind of Skype video calling, despite that I'm 3 hours behind.
Yeah, no, all good, man. It's always fun.
Yeah. It's good to talk, and for the listeners, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the SplashTag Podcast. You can do that either on the YouTube channel or through the Apple, the iTunes podcast directory, whether it be on the app or the actual iTunes store. I want to thank you guys for listening again. I want to thank Joe for joining me today. And you'll hear from us really soon, probably like the start of free agency. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll